Are the Patriots no longer Boston's model franchise? It's been a rough 4 years. We examine here on Patscast. Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The New England Patriots are taking an off day doing some community activities in the midst of minicamp before they ultimately wrap up minicamp this week. So going to have a little bit of fun today with the rise of the Boston Celtics, who are very close to winning an NBA championship, their first since the Pierce, Garnett, Ray Allen era, and going to talk about the four major Boston sports teams. We know the New England Patriots have had a rough 4 years since about 20 years of sustained success under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Boston Celtics are on the verge of a title. The Boston Bruins have had some success in recent years, and the Boston Red Sox, frankly, are all over the place. But let me start by talking about popularity. Now, I will preface this by saying I was not around during the 1980s and the years before that, where the Boston Celtics won title after title. So if you were around during those years, I'm curious to hear from you in the comments on if the Celtics were the most popular team in town, because I wasn't around to see it. Was Boston a basketball city during those days? I'm curious. But growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, Boston really seemed like a baseball town, particularly once Pedro Martinez, Nomar Garciaparra, Mo Vaughn, all those guys got there, and they kind of started the new Boston sports era, which ultimately led to the Curt Schilling, Pedro, David Ortiz, Manny Ramirez era, where they won a couple of titles in the 2000s, and then the Red Sox had some success after that in the 2010s. But I would say Boston was a baseball town for the most part growing up for me, up until about 2007, when they won their second World Series title in, 90 years or whatever it was, when they broke the curse. And it was obviously a baseball town 2003, 2004 when they broke the curse, and I think that sustained for a few years after that. But then in 2007, Red Sox won again, and ever since then, it never really fully felt like a baseball town. And part of the reason for that was because of the success of the New England Patriots. We know they won 3 Super Bowl titles in 4 years under the early part of the Brady-Belichick era. And then around 2007, even though the Patriots won on about a 10-year lag before they won their next Super Bowl, they were obviously still very competitive. And I would argue some of their best teams, and certainly their best offense, occurred around that time, with the 18-1 season with Tom Brady and Randy Moss and Wes Welker. And we know that record-breaking offense and all that they did. I think around that time, Boston actually became a football town. And it kind of stayed that way up until Tom Brady ultimately left before the 2020 season and the COVID madness we all went through. But the Red Sox kind of just became an afterthought. Even when they were winning World Series titles, 2013 they won it, 2018 they won it, and they built a nice foundation, which they ultimately traded away a few seasons later. Honestly, they didn't need to keep everyone. The Houston Astros weren't able to keep everyone, but they've kind of kept that same foundation and had sustained success because of it. But the Red Sox kind of pinch pennies a little bit, even though they have they're one of the richest teams in Major League Baseball. They traded away Mookie Betts. Benintendi was no longer there. Jackie Bradley kind of fell off. They got let go of some pitchers. And that 2018 team, which honestly I think they could have sustained for a little bit longer, dwindled, and now the Red Sox have basically been a sub-500 team at best most years. They had 1 year where it looked like they were going to be competitive and make the World Series again before they were ultimately knocked off by the Houston Astros. But even during that time, I don't think Boston was a baseball town. I mean, it's been a while since the Red Sox were consistently selling out games at Fenway Park. Now, if you watch games, there's whole sections that are empty, and they really, I don't think, have been the model franchise that you want them to be, and they certainly haven't been in terms of popularity. And maybe a lot of that has to do with the way baseball markets its stars. They don't do it very often. They're very regional, team-oriented relative to the NBA and the NFL, where they really do market their stars and build popularity outside of their respective cities. Baseball has been kind of holding itself back in terms of marketing there, and I think that has impacted the popularity of the Boston Red Sox. Now, then you have the Boston Celtics, right? I don't think, even right now, I would not consider Boston a basketball town. Even though the Celtics have been one of the most competitive teams, at least in the Eastern Conference, since around year 2 of the Brad Stevens era. How many years have they made the conference finals? They made a couple of NBA finals, counting this year, but it never really felt like a basketball town, and it still really does not. And then, of course, there's the Boston Bruins, who I think probably has the most passionate fan base, but just because hockey is a far more niche sport compared to the other 3 major sports, it's hard to say they're the most popular, even if they might have the rowdiest fan base, and even though hockey is probably more popular than most regions throughout the United States, it's kind of hard to factor the Bruins in there because hockey kind of comes fourth when it comes to national and even regional popularity in New England. So that leaves the New England Patriots. And like I said, I would argue Patriots, Boston, was a football town for about 13 years. Throughout the Tom Brady era, throughout the Randy Moss high-flying, flashy offense, into Gronk, into the 3 Super Bowls, it really did become a football town. And I think it sort of felt that way even as we headed into the post-Tom Brady era. You know, there were still national TV games as we entered the COVID era with Cam Newton, and the Patriots, at least the first couple of years with Mac Jones, they were getting a ton of national TV games. And I'd say Boston still kind of felt like a football town, you know, resting on its laurels a little bit from the Tom Brady era. And look, they were still competitive the first couple of years in the Mac Jones era. They were a playoff team. They had the best record in the NFL at one point during Mac's rookie year. And they were the last team in the playoff picture heading into the last week of Mac's his sophomore season with the New England Patriots. But I would argue, since about the midway point of Mac Jones' sophomore year, it kind of stopped feeling like a football town. But the question is, what is it now? Is it a baseball town? I don't think so, because Fenway is not filling seats like they used to. There's people that want John Henry to sell the team, and John Henry is constantly pushing back on that. He's getting booed at public events. It doesn't feel like the Red Sox are the most popular. Patriots, one of the worst teams in the NFL last year, had the 3rd overall pick because of it. They had $10 tickets at their last game of the season this past year. You can't say they're the most popular team. The Bruins, again, popular fan base, but certainly not the most popular in Boston because it is hockey. So I guess it is the Celtics right now, but it doesn't really feel like a basketball city. So I really don't know what Boston is at this point in time. Let me know in the comments if you think it is a basketball city. It feels like it right now because of everything the Celtics are doing, but I don't know. It still feels like we're sort of resting on the laurels from the Brady era. I mean, they're having a Tom Brady ceremony, which honestly is kind of overkill. We just went through that. It seems like Robert Kraft, because he's probably a good businessman, is, you know, still looking back on those years as the Patriots are going through a rebuild, but I'm not sure what it is. So let's talk about a little bit about who is the model franchise now. And I don't think it's the Red Sox, with all the issues with ownership, with all the frustrations among the fan base and their unwillingness to spend despite having the money to spend, and John Henry devoting his assets somewhere else. I don't think they're the model franchise. And even though the Red Sox have won a couple of World Series over the last 11 years, and they've had some competitive teams in the other years, they've also had some really bad down years where they've been the worst team in the American League East. And those massive fluctuations between success and failure and seeing the ballpark no longer attended the way it used to. In fact, if you go to a Red Sox game now and they're playing a high-profile team like the Dodgers or the Giants or the Cubs or the Yankees, you're seeing tons of fans from the opposing team, which was not something that you saw in the past. I don't think they're the model franchise anymore. The Bruins, I mean, look, I'm not the biggest Bruins fan. I'm kind of a playoff bandwagon fan, so I can't speak to this as well as most, but there seems to be some instability in that organization in terms of ownership, the turnover among managers, and the turnover among like just who's going to play goalie. I mean, they go back and forth at goalie throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, I'm not sure they're the model franchise. So at this point, I think it has to be the Boston Celtics because of everything they've done, because they made the wise decision to take Brad Stevens, who was at least a top 10 NBA head coach, arguably top 5, and move him to the front office where he really picked everything up immediately, looked like a seasoned general manager right away, and was able to make some spectacular trades this offseason. And it was sad seeing guys like Marcus Smart go somewhere else because he was sort of the model Boston Celtics player, the X factor, the heavy defensive player. And of course, Rob Williams, who was that big center, that Bill Russell style player that they really haven't had since Russell. But of course, he couldn't stay on the court, but they ended up bringing in Drew Holiday and bringing in Kristaps Porzingis, who also can't stay healthy, but when he contributes, he certainly contributes, as we've seen during the NBA Finals. We'll see if he's out there for the remainder of the Finals because he now has another injury. But the Celtics have been in the Eastern Conference Finals pretty much every year. There was the year where they had Kyrie and everything was kind of falling apart where they missed it. But since Brad Stevens took over, I think he was in the Eastern Conference Finals by year 3. Might have even been year 2. You know, they were knocked out by LeBron. They were clearly not the better team a lot of those seasons. But I think the sustained success of the Celtics that has happened over the last near decade really shows that they are the model franchise. They are the team that is going to have sustained success even into the future. They have Jaylen Brown long-term. They have Jason Tatum long-term. They're not going to be able to keep everyone after this season, but they're going to have 4 to 5 all-stars or past all-stars in that starting lineup for years to come, which the NBA is really trying to move away from at this point after the whole debacle with the Golden State Warriors and Kevin Durant going there and the way they changed the CBA. The NBA obviously does not want that, but the Celtics and Brad Stevens have figured out a way around that, and they even took a guy who is incredibly inexperienced, Joe Mazzulla, who took over for Ime Udoka, who was a very good NBA head coach, and he showed his growing pains last postseason, but now he's making mid-game adjustments that the best NBA coaches don't make. You know, Eric Spoelstra, who I would argue is the best coach in today's NBA, was simply outcoached in the first round of this year's NBA playoffs. So, Celtics have to be the model franchise. So I guess the question is, how did the New England Patriots get back there? And as I said, Robert Kraft is continuing to look back on the Brady era, having all these ceremonies and bringing Brady to town, and hopefully Belichick will get his red jacket soon. He's going to be at the Tom Brady ceremony. He's looking to the past a little bit while the Patriots go through these struggles, but the Patriots did go from being the model franchise, and yes, I know there was Spygate and Deflategate, and we can all argue about the legitimacy of those so-called scandals, but it really began to fall apart the last 2 to 3 seasons of the Tom Brady era under Bill Belichick, and there was a real divide in that locker room, as we all saw in the Apple TV Plus documentary, and as folks poked fun at during the Tom Brady roast. They have a long way to get back to where they were. You know, Gillette Stadium, when it opened year 3 of Tom Brady's career, was a state-of-the-art NFL stadium, and they've had renovations. They built Patriot Place. It's turned into a very strong NFL complex and kind of a tourist attraction, but that stadium's getting old. It does not stand up to SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. It doesn't stand up to Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. And they don't have a real practice facility. Robert Kraft says he's devoting like $50 million or something to a practice facility adjacent to the stadium, but that's not a lot of money in the scheme of things. Jerry Jones spent over $1 billion on the Cowboys practice facility, and I'd say the Patriots have been far more of a model franchise than the Dallas Cowboys, even with some of their recent success. But Robert Kraft hasn't been able to kind of keep up with it, and he's going to have to devote a lot more money to that to attract high-end free agents, especially while the Patriots are rebuilding. And then you have the NFLPA report card, which talks about there's no daycare, the food's not good, the training facilities, the weight room. Everything at Gillette Stadium just seems outdated at this point, and we also don't have a practice facility that is separate from the stadium as some of these other teams have. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons, we know they have an incredible stadium in downtown Atlanta, but their practice facility, which is miles and miles away in a suburb of Atlanta, really rivals what the Dallas Cowboys have. And that seems to be the way these NFL franchises are moving, and Robert Kraft has been kind of sitting on his hands, looking back at the Brady era, seeing what's happened, putting a lot of trust in Bill Belichick when perhaps he shouldn't have after many failed drafts, particularly on the offensive side of the football. You know, he could have put his foot down and said, look, Bill, I know you've had a lot of control over this for the last however many years, and you've certainly grown into that role and earned it, but you haven't earned it the last few seasons. We're going to bring in a real general manager that's going to help improve us on offense, and maybe they wouldn't have gone 4-13. He could have made that decision years ago and made it work with Mac Jones, or done what they could when Josh McDaniels left to keep a real offense out there. Because, look, Mac Jones really thrived in that Josh McDaniels offense, which I know is not ideal for the modern NFL. Very complex. The quarterback has 2 to 3 plays after the huddle, then they call audibles at the line. They got to always point out the mic. They have to do all of these steps in order to make a play happen, but we know it worked under Tom Brady, and frankly, it worked under Mac Jones. He picked it up easily, and had Josh McDaniels stay, and I'm not sure they could have convinced him to stay like they did in the past, there could have been some really good Patriots teams the last couple of seasons. So it's interesting to see what's happened with New England. It's going to take a lot for them to get back. Obviously, it starts by winning. It starts by Gerard Mayo having some initial success as a head coach. Elliott Wolf really making sure this Green Bay Packers-style rebuild actually works in New England. I give him probably a B+ grade so far, working with what he's had. I think he had a great draft. So it starts with winning, and if Drake May works out at quarterback, which he's learning at a faster rate than I think any of us could have expected, then they're off and running. But they're going to also have to upgrade their facilities. Not saying they need to necessarily build a new stadium. I mean, they just put in a new Jumbotron, the lighthouse, which I don't really like because it doesn't have a roof. It doesn't even look like a lighthouse. I went on and on about that a couple months ago. But overall, it's going to take a lot for Robert Kraft. Not just having a winning organization again, but upgrading those facilities, making New England an attractive destination because they got to play in the elements. It's cold. They don't play in Boston. They don't have the excitement of the city. The fans have to travel out and sit in Route 1 traffic for 3 hours before they can park. There's a lot of areas that the Patriots can upgrade. And in order for them to become the model franchise again in Boston, to exceed the Boston Celtics, which again, I don't think Boston's a basketball city, despite the Celtics' success. I think they can become a football city again, but they're going to need to become an AFC East contender again and a Super Bowl contender year after year in order for that to happen. And look, Robert Kraft did it before. Jonathan Kraft eventually is going to have to assume that role, and he's hopefully going to have similar success. But Patriots are a long way from that happening. Let me know in the comments below how you think the Patriots can return to being Boston's model franchise. I'm curious to hear from you, and if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to the channel. I've had a lot of growth the last couple of months. We're over 2,000 subscribers now, and it's continuing to grow, so thank you for watching or listening. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, of course, subscribe there, and we'll be back the rest of the week with more New England Patriots coverage.
Once the kings of Boston rushing past the stars, past cast preaching our heroes battling so far. Patriots, we can't live on faded posts. New dynasty brewing, it's there for the grasp. Claim the throne again, hear the crowds climb.